Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make homemade donuts. Actually, homemade raised donuts, which means we are going to make a real buttery rich yeast dough. So to start, I'm going to make the dough by hand. If you want to use your stand mixer, you can. Just start out with the paddle attachment, and then when we need the dough, switch to your dough hook. So in a large bowl, we are probably going to use somewhere between 2 1/4 and 2 1/2 cups, which is about 295 grams to 330. But I'm going to start with the lower amount, 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour, which is about 295 grams. So put that in a large bowl, and then we're going to add 1 1/2 teaspoons of active dry yeast. Now you can buy it in these jars like this, or you can find it also in little envelope. I think 3 or 4 little envelopes to a pack, either way. And then what we're going to do is just whisk or stir the yeast into the flour. And then, like I said, this is kind of a rich yeast dough. So we're going to add 3 tablespoons, that's 40 grams of butter. I like to use unsalted. I prefer the flavor to salted, but you can use either one. And have it nice and soft, because what we're going to do is just going to work it into our flour mixture until it's in small pieces like coarse crumbs. Now you could just use your fingertips, or you could use a pastry blender, either way. Let's work it in. If you're using your stand mixer, just use your paddle attachment for this. I'll just show you. So that's with your pastry blender, or you can just move it through your fingertips, like so. Pretty easy. Just going to work that in. Now this isn't a large batch of donuts, because homemade donuts are really at their best when they come right out of the vat, freshly made. So this makes about 3-inch donuts. It's about 7 centimeters, maybe 8, 10. So you could always double this recipe if you had a large crowd. So now what I'm going to add is 3 tablespoons of granulated white sugar, because we want this dough a little sweet, and just 1/4 teaspoon of salt. I'm using the kosher salt. And again, just kind of whisk that in. And then just kind of make a well in the center. And then what I'm going to do is we need 1 large egg. Have that at room temperature, and just whisk it. Or you can use a fork if you don't have a little wire whisk like this, just to break it up. And add that. Along with a 1/2 cup, 120 milliliters of milk. You can use whole milk or reduced fat, maybe 2%. I wouldn't use skim because we want the dough to be a little rich. So you could use the 2%. And then have it lukewarm. Just so when you put it on your wrist, it just feels warm. So I just did that in the microwave. You could do it on the stove or in the microwave. And then I'm just using my spatula. You could just use your fingers to mix these two together, the wet and the dry. You can see it's a pretty easy dough to make. So I have the extra 1/4 cup, 35 grams of the flour, because we may need to add more. It's always hard to tell, so you want to start with the lower amount. So now I'm going to start in the bowl, just kind of bringing the dough together. The trick is not to add too much flour. We don't want a sticky dough, but we don't want it to overwork it, because then our donuts will be tough, which we don't want. Okay, so like I said, if you're using your electric mixer, now you would switch over to your dough hook. So I'm just putting like a little flour. Just put a little flour at a time on your surface. And then we're going to just knead. Just take with the, I always use the heel of my hand just to work it. Now we're going to work this until it's no longer sticky and it's really nice and smooth. Silky smooth. So I'm thinking maybe, 4 or 5 minutes. Take a little less if you're using your using an electric stand mixer. Okay, so that's nice. It's no longer sticky. It feels like nice and smooth, soft. So we're ready. So now take a large bowl and you can either lightly butter it, or you could use a little flavorless oil, or even just spray it with one of those nonstick sprays. This is a light coating. And then I just go like that and turn it upside down so you get a little of the oil on the top of the dough. And then just take a piece of plastic wrap, put it over top loosely, and you want to put it in a nice warm place, no drafts, and then let it rise to almost double. That will take, depending on how warm your room is, it could take probably usually an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours. So just let it rise. Okay, so our dough has now doubled in size. So now we can form our donuts. So what you will need is a large baking sheet, and I like to line it with a piece of parchment, or you could use wax paper, or you really don't even need to line it. And then what you want to do is just sprinkle a little flour on it. That way when we put the donuts on there and then let them rise again, they won't stick to the bottom of the pan. So you just want a light coating. So, okay. And then just gently the air out of our dough, and then you will need to put some flour on your surface, and so. And you will need a rolling pin. And make sure we don't want our dough sticking to our surface, so flour as much as you need to. And then flour your rolling pin. And we're going to roll this to about 1/2 inch thickness, which is about 1 centimeter. Doesn't really matter what shape. See, it's beautiful. Nice and soft. Okay, that's good. It's sticking. Just check to make sure. You need to flour the surface, just put a little more there. Okay. So now, of course you can make your donuts any size you want. You can use an actual donut cutter that has the outside and then the inner ring, or you could just use, normally what I use is just 2 cookie cutters, a large one and a small one for the donut hole. And any size, I find like 2.5, 3 inches is about right for me. That's 6-7 centimeters, but again, if you want them bigger than that, you certainly can. And then flour your, cut them out. Oh, didn't do that too good. So once you have that, take your inner ring, flour it, and cut out the little donut hole. Now, some people like to just gather up the donut holes and re-roll them, or I like to actually fry those as well, so your choice. go. So I'm just doing that. And then just re-roll the scraps once you've cut out as many as you can from this. Just gather them all up and re-roll and cut out more. Okay, last one here. So now, got to cover that. Now you could, some people just sprinkle a little flour over the top of the donuts, because we're going to cover it with a piece of plastic wrap. We don't want, as the donuts rise, we don't want the plastic wrap to stick. So what I do is just take one of those non-stick sprays and just spray the plastic. Does the same thing, and then just loosely cover. And then again, try to find a nice warm place and let these rise to almost double. And that will take, depending again on how warm your kitchen is, somewhere between a half an hour and an hour. So while our donuts are rising, we need to start heating our oil because we are deep frying these donuts. Now, first, you always have to be careful whenever you're deep frying. So never leave your oil unattended, and have a fire extinguisher handy. Also have the lid of your pot. And you will need a large pot, like a Dutch oven. And you need to put in about 2 inches, which is 5 centimeters of oil, a flavorless oil. I tend to use either a canola, a corn, or a vegetable oil. And then you are going to heat this on medium-high heat. So that can take, with this amount of oil, that could take anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes. So, and again, always watch it. And then we need to bring the oil up to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 190 degrees Celsius. So what I recommend getting is a candy thermometer. And I like the ones with the clip on the back, so then we can just clip it right onto the side of our pot, and we can constantly monitor our oil, as we're frying our donuts. If you don't have a candy thermometer, I do recommend buying one, but you could just put a little cube of bread into the oil when you think it's ready, and then if it browns in about 30 to 40 seconds, you know it's ready. So have that, and then, of course, if you have a deep fryer, you could use that. And then for turning the donuts and for bringing them out of the hot oil, you could use different things. You could use a bamboo chopsticks. Make sure they're bamboo, that they can take the heat of the oil. Or you could use just a slotted spoon, tongs, or a skimmer. And then you will need, because we want to, once we bring the donuts out of the hot oil, we want to just put them on some paper towel to absorb any fat that is on the donuts. So just take a baking sheet. Now make sure that you keep the paper towel away from the hot fat. And then you will also need a baking rack and another, you can put it on a plate, or I have a baking sheet. So just take about a half to a cup of sugar and just have that ready. It's about 200 grams of sugar. So like I said, it usually takes 20 to 30 minutes over medium-high heat to heat your oil to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, 190 degrees Celsius. Okay, so now we're ready to fry our donuts. So I'm just using my hands. You could use your slotted spoon and then very gently put them in the oil. Don't put too many, 2, 3 for this size, or you could put some donut holes. It only takes about 30 to 60 seconds per side for the donuts. For the little donut holes, you might want to have a sharp little toothpick and just pop them, because they do tend to puff up and then they're hard to turn over. So golden brown. You may, like I said, adjust the heat as necessary to keep it at that 375 Fahrenheit, 190 degrees Celsius. And then you can just use your skewer or any of the other utensils to kind of flip them over. So I think that looks good. So there we are. I love these little chopsticks. I mean, it's just so easy. So just until a golden brown. You see? Those little ones are hard to do. Okay, so I'm going to use the slotted spoon for the donut holes. Just drain them of the fat, so, and then just put them on the paper towel, and then, yeah, our donuts are done. So again, just hold it over, drain it, put it on our paper towel. Now these are at their best freshly made, so you want to have the crowd ready. And then, so now you may have to adjust the heat up a bit, get it back to the 375. So don't start the next batch until you make sure that heat recovers, because it takes a bit. So then what I'm going to do is just, like I said, I like the sugar, the granulated white, as much or as little as you want. And the little donut holes. Kids love those. And then so do I. So here we have the donut. It's still a little hot, but can't resist. So here we go. You can see, beautiful. Nice and soft and tender. I got to have some because when they're fresh out of the oil, that's when they're at their best. Very nice. It's hard to eat just one. The outside is really nice and crisp, and I love that like sugary coating, and then inside they're just soft and tender. So have fun. Like I said, be careful with the oil. So until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.